Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week I was lucky enough to sit down and chat with Mike Mitchell. He's best known for playing Randy on Netflix Love, which just concluded its third and final season. We chat about everything from Bob Odenkirk to sketch comedy to his time as a CBS page and how a misunderstanding helped get him hired at The Simpsons. It's a really fun interview and I hope you enjoy.
Hello.
Hey, is this Mike?
It is. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, doing great. This is Les from the TV Dudes.
Oh, hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate you taking time for the interview, man.
I know. I'm sorry that we couldn't connect last week. I had a couple of auditions that got in the way. So.
No, that's a nice problem to have.
Yeah. No. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I had it in my calendar as a sit down with Mitchie Two Spoons, and so as it got more difficult, it just sounded more interesting. So.
I love that and maybe also hate it. I don't even know.
I've never had a nickname, and I saw that one. I listened to Doughboys, and I heard that was like that spectacular. Yeah.
To be fair, I did give it to myself. So I christened myself with my own nickname. So yeah, don't feel bad about not having. No. Most people aren't egomaniacs and won't give themselves.
I feel like I feel like a lot more nicknames than people realize are probably self-assigned. I think that's just good marketing.
That is true.
Probably better known than that. You're probably most known right now for Randy Monahan on recently on Netflix's Love.
That's right.
I know you have a background in Upright Citizens Brigade and writing for Hidden America. When did it click for you that you were funny more than just class cut up or ham that like you might be able to do this?
Oh man, that's a great question. I don't know if that has happened yet. I feel like, it's like such a kind of a touchy thing where it's like people who are funny, they don't want to say that they're funny. You know what I mean? Like comedians don't want to say that they're funny. It's kind of like a no-no. So, I mean, like growing up and stuff, I was the class clown. I love to joke around. That's never changed.
Do you remember the first time that you surprised a room, or you surprised yourself by looking up and realizing like you had the whole room in your hand?
You know what? I remember more so the first times I like bombed, which it's stuck in my head forever. But I like have certain memories of that when I was like in elementary school or middle school or whatever, and I knew I was funny. And then a lot of people think you're weird because you're a little kid trying weird stuff, and a lot of people don't understand that or whatever, and you don't even understand it yourself, I feel like. But then I think when I got to college, and that's where I realized like, oh, you can do this for like a career. You can go and try to write or act or whatever. Because I started off I did theater camp and I did stuff like that. I was an actor as a kid, and then once I got to high school, I kind of was like, oh, I'm not going to do this anymore. I was afraid of getting made fun of, which is now I regret that now that I'm older. But then also I just like, oh, what more can I do with this or whatever? I didn't really understand. And that's not why you get into it anyways. You do it because you love it, and I did love it, but I feel like my awkward teen phase kind of outweighed me trying to pursue it anymore, and I just didn't think that I would ever keep going in it. And so when I got to college, it kind of made me realize, oh, there's a communication school, there's people that study screenwriting and cinema production, and that's I transferred over to cinema production from computer science, which I knew nothing about. I knew absolutely zero about computer science. I liked the internet, I think is why I majored in computer science. So yeah, I think it was around then that I realized like, oh, I can like do this, like I could pursue this I could do this for work or for my job or for my life and before that I never thought that was a possibility. And then when I got out to LA, I started to do improv again. Like I took improv classes right away, basically when I got out here, and that kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, I like performing, I like acting. I shouldn't have given it up, and I want to pursue that more, and that's kind of how that happened.
What was it like making that decision to let go of things and move out to LA and do that?
Oh man, it was I have to give so much credit to my mom and dad for just like, I graduated. I mean, like, there's so many kids now, I feel like, and even back then, I just didn't have my shit together. But like, I feel like back in the day, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was going to school. I didn't even understand that. And now looking back at like when I was 22, I completely didn't understand what I really wanted to do. You know, like even still then, I knew that I wanted to make people laugh for a living, but I didn't even really understand how you could do that. And I honestly, there's like a good chance I could have ended up just working and living but I did it. I took a summer class out here in LA, and one of my professors kind of advised me to do it because I had a huge over to cinema production like a little later, like a year or so into, or like maybe the end of my sophomore year, I transferred over, so I still had some stuff to do. And she was like, "Oh, you should go take one summer semester class because you can't. You're my senior year or whatever."
Mm-hmm.
And so I took a class out here, and then the guy who I had an internship with, he was working on a movie in Denver, and he said that if I wanted to go work on that movie, I could in the camera department. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. That sounds like that could be fun. And I went and did that. And then my dad was like, you should try to like, you know, like once that's over, you should try to pursue it. If you want to do that, you know, you went to school for it, you just studied for a few years trying to do this stuff. So why don't you go and give it a shot? And I was like, oh, okay. And I honestly, him and my mom being supportive of it made me be like, all right, sure, I'll try it. And it was something I did want to do, but they helped me out big time, because in my mind I was like, I don't know what to do now. So I thought you had to come home and start like making money immediately, which you kind of do have once you're out of school. I did have to start making money, and my mom and dad helps. My dad kept me afloat for the first like 6 months to a year, which was very helpful. So I owe everything to them. They're the best.
Yeah, it's always scary when you're in any kind of career field that doesn't have a straight path to an internship at an office, and you're going to work your way up to this desk and then this office, and
yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's I got lucky pretty quick, just in that I moved out here not knowing anyone, and then that first year was tough, and I worked as a bouncer. I had kind of odd jobs, and then about a year into working out here or living out here, I'd started going to shows at UCB Theater on Franklin, and they were actually new in the summer of 2005, I think, and I was going there towards the end of 2005. And then Mike Hanford, who is this guy who's in my sketch group, who's a super funny guy, he told me he was looking at different theaters and he wanted to take classes. And so we went around and we looked at different theaters, and we decided UCB was kind of the place to do it. And that's kind of how things started to get rolling. And then I got lucky too in work in that I applied for like a page program at CBS, which is you have to wear kind of goofy coats. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm totally picturing Kenneth from 30 Rock.
Yes, exactly. Yes, Kenneth. Kenneth he's an NBC page. I was a CBS page, and so I worked over at CBS when Bob Barker was retiring, and like when he was done with Price is Right, and I was there for probably maybe close to a year. And then Dave Ferguson, who is now a guy who was in my sketch group, but I don't even know if we had fully formed at that point, but we were hanging out and doing comedy stuff together. He he told me of a lead about like there was a job at the show Shark, which is a James Wood show that doesn't exist anymore. I went over there as the post-production assistant, and I worked there for a little bit. Then there was the writer's strike of 2007, and so the writer's strike happened, and I was out of a job basically. But I luckily just emailed I actually even called the Simpsons, like there's like just the writing offices, and I was like, hey, do you guys need will you after the writer's strike is over, are you guys going to need any assistance or anything? And they were like, actually, yeah, we will. And I was like, oh man, this is crazy, because I loved The Simpsons growing up. It was part of the reason I feel like I even got into comedy. And so I was like, great. And I dropped my resume off, and then Tim Kalpakis, who was another guy in my sketch group, I was like, can you put my resume on someone's desk? And he put it on basically Lorena Adamson, who was my boss. He put it on her desk, and she thought it came from a Simpsons writer, Tim Long. And so I basically got hired. They called me in, and they were like, so Tim Long recommended you. And I was like, uh-huh. I didn't say no. I didn't say no. I just said, yeah. I mean, I don't think I said yes either, but I didn't deny it. And I got hired with that. So I was lucky enough that I was kind of working early in like kind of weird connections, but I was working early on. The Page program isn't enough money to really. That was probably the time where my dad was kind of helping me out in that 6 months there. But early on, I got a job. Yeah, from 2007 till 2011, I worked at The Simpsons about 3.5 years.
And the sketch group you're talking about, is that Birthday Boys?
That's the Birthday Boys. Yep.
Can you talk about a bit about how you got involved with Bob Odenkirk?
Yeah. So at the time, this is probably 2009 or so. But you'll perform at UCB, and you'll do comedy around the city, and then like people take notice you. When you look for like a manager or whatever. And or like management companies will look at you and decide whether they want to rep you or not. It's kind of like a weird first step that a lot of people in comedy, you know what I mean? Like, and then they'll start sending you out for auditions and stuff like that. So, and I'm sure that a lot of people know that, but then I'm sure a lot of people don't know that too. But well, you perform. We were performing now for like a couple of years or whatever. Bob's wife Naomi has a management company. And then Brooke Popjoy is also a manager over there. At the time, I think she was an assistant. And she was like Tim Kalpakis and Dave Ferguson, I think, like they were with Prince Potter Young. And then Brooke was kind of like coming out to shows and checking out some of the guys in the group who didn't have managers. And she was super nice, and she was a fan of ours, and she's awesome. And she told Naomi about us, and we at the time, like, we weren't intentionally like a clean sketch group, but we never went really blue. And Naomi has this show called the Not Inappropriate Show, which they do on New Year's Day every year, New Year's Eve day, I believe. And so she's always looking for acts to book for that. And Brooke was like, these guys are good. You should come check them out. And she came and checked us out, and she asked us to do the Not Inappropriate Show. And Bob does it. And Bob does it every year. The funny thing is I'm always home in Boston for New Year's. I've never done the Not Inappropriate Show. But Bob came to one of those shows, and then he kind of like offhandedly said something to Tim Kalpakis. Tim writes a lot of our sketches, and he's a super talented writer, super funny guy. And he was just like, oh, I would have done this way. And then Tim was like, what do you mean by that? And so Tim emailed Bob and was like, hey, what do you mean by that? Like, what was that? And then he was like, why don't you come in and talk to me about it? So Tim met with Bob, and then Bob was kind of like Bob loves sketch, and I think will forever love sketch, which everybody who does sketch comedy, you hate, like after a while you hate it, but you also will always love it. It's like it's this sort of thing that the love-hate relationship with sketch just lasts forever. And I think Bob was kind of like interested in doing sketch again. So he kind of like, he started getting some people together, like some of Naomi's clients, and then Tim and Mike Hanford, and they did a show for a little bit that they put up in Hollywood. And then a couple months later, Bob was like, oh, you know, I want to work with like a group that kind of like is together and has been together and kind of has like their voice or whatever. And so, he was like, I want you guys to come in and let's talk about a show. So we went in and met with him. And he was like, he said that we should put a show together, not at UCB, and do it at the Steve Allen Theater. And so we did a show at Steve Allen. I think it was something like we did one in like the summertime, and then we did one like 6 months later, maybe towards the holidays in the fall or whatever. Yeah, like maybe early, like April or May, and then towards the end of the year. And we did those, and they were a lot of fun. They were. I mean, it was awesome to work with Bob because he's an idol to a lot of us, and he's one of the funniest guys and one of the funniest people to ever do sketch. And so we did those shows with him, and then he was like, "Now we should like try to pitch it as like we should try to pitch a TV show." And so much of that just came from Bob, watching us and enjoying us and recognizing something in us. And we're forever, grateful to that guy for everything.
What was it like getting the casting audition for Love?
The audition for Love was auditions for me are always terrifying. They're just, and they're like such a different thing from actually performing and acting. They're just like this weird other talent to have that I am not great at. But for Love, Paul and Leslie created Love with Judd Apatow, and Paul along with Neil Campbell, they were mentors to the Birthday Boys, which my sketch group. Mm-hmm. So when we first started coming to UCB, they hosted this show called Not Too Shabby, which was an open mic sketch show at UCB. And Neil and Paul directed our first show after, like, we would do sketches at Not Too Shabby, and then we put up a show at UCB that had, that ran for a year or something, and they directed that show. And so they were really just our mentors. And then we started doing a new show every month at UCB. And we were paired up with Neil and Paul's sketch team, which is a group called The Kiss from Daddy, which has like the funniest writers and performers in that group. And Eva Anderson is in that group. Mookie Blakelock, Harris Whittles was in that group. Michael Cassidy, Alan McLeod, Neil Campbell, Paul Russ, like all these super, super funny people that were like my favorite writers and performers. And so we knew those guys forever. And Paul is like a friend. And at the same time, I'm a fan of Paul, and his wife Leslie is so cool and funny. And so when they were casting the show, there was like a few people that were reading for the show. And I read for a part that was basically like Paul's friend, but it was one of those roles that like wasn't really defined yet. It was just kind of like, we were just kind of reading to like, almost like chemistry reads or something with Paul. And so, I went through a few levels of it with Allison Jones, who's an awesome casting director, and she's great. And I went in there and I was nerve-wracked, and I always am. And auditioning to me, it just is nerve-wracking, and it is terrifying in many ways. But you got to do it, obviously. So I went in and read with them a few times, and it went well. And then I went in and read for Allison Jones and Ben, who works with Allison Jones, and Ben Harris, I believe, and then Judd and Gillian Jacobs and Leslie Arfin, and there was a room full of 7 people or whatever which it's like, oh man, this is you're kind of in the last phase of it, but it makes it a little more kind of tense, and stressful. Even though they are friends, and Paul was like, made me completely comfortable with stuff, and we read for it, and it went well, and I felt good about it, but I was like, I felt like all the other times went better than that time, and this is stuff that you just get in your head about. And then, so that role, basically, I didn't get that role, and Chris Witowski was cast basically in the role that became, I think. I was grateful to even go out for it, and I was just happy for Paul and Leslie, and I was like, I'll get, if they want me to be involved with the show in some way, I will be. And then a little into that first season, Paul told me that they were trying to get me in there in some capacity, and they were trying to figure out what to do for me. And so I basically come in as a taste tester or like a focus group member, and Claudia O'Darty she runs the focus group, and I'm trying these snacks. And then Paul told me, he was like, then we're going to have it come back around. You're going to like meet her at a party, and like maybe there'll be something between you guys. And that's basically how it started off for me, which was awesome. And then I got to know Claudia, who is like one of the funniest people on earth, and it was great. And the role kind of just grew from there.
I think the chemistry between everybody on the show is part of its really surprising magic.
Oh yeah.
The relationships are just never quite where you think they're going to go. I worried when Randy first entered the show that you were going to end up being kind of a villain, that you were going to be this genuinely bad boyfriend that like people were going to have to really, and then almost every turn it surprised me that, I mean, bad things happen, but everybody's realistic about it. And, even when it comes down to the last scenes in the final season, when you show up to kind of crash, it's still kind of a beautiful, sweet scene. Like Randy always surprises me with this niceness that,
yeah,
from the time you're confronted about borrowing the money till the end, it doesn't always work out, but he always kind of, his heart seems to be in the right place.
That's very nice of you to say.
Did you ever worry about where the show might be going? That sometimes like, oh crap, I might be the villain here.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like I would read stuff and be like, oh man, Randy, there he goes again. Like this is bad. I don't know how he's going to come back from some of this stuff. And Paul would always tell me, and I got to give Paul so much credit too. I mean, he's such an amazing actress. She's so good. And she plays Mickey so well. And Paul too. Paul is like one of the sweetest, like nicest guys, and also one of the funniest people. Just truly one of the funniest people I've ever met. And in that show, like he writes himself as like not as nice as he is. He makes his character a little bit more of a jerk in many ways, and Paul is like less of a dork and is like a funnier guy than even Gus is, even though Gus is very funny in the show. But that's how Paul wrote him. And Paul told me that like when they were writing Randy, they're like, oh, you can have this natural likability about you, which is very nice of them to say. And I disagree in some ways because I don't like myself as much as they seem to like me, which is very nice of them. But they're like, oh yeah, you have this like likability about yourself, and we try to push Randy kind of as far as we can push him, with still having you like come off as kind of likable in some ways, and I think that they did. They definitely pushed that because Randy goes he gets pretty extreme throughout the 3 seasons. But it's funny because some people will like tweet at me and be like, or like I'll read things where people are like, oh, I hate Randy or whatever, and then some people will like him, and a lot of the time I'm like, man, I feel like there's a lot of Randy, like there's a little bit of Randy in almost everybody, whether you want to admit it or not. Not that everyone is fully like him because he's a mess, but there's parts of Randy that's in everybody, and I think that maybe people see that and react to that. and don't like that they have a part of themselves that like that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I've had that. I mean, I've had a roommate where like we had to have a talk of, hey man, if you ever want to talk to me again on the street, you need to move out now. And I don't hate you yet, but we're very close.
Yeah.
And that's, I feel like that's kind of the wall that Randy hit a couple times of like, man, nobody's just gonna punch you and call the cops, but you should just leave for a minute right now and let everything cool down.
Yeah, he's very sweet, and this is kind of like, he's a sweet guy, and then he tries to get like, just because he's a sweet, nice guy, he tries to get away with some stuff. Or, and honestly, I think that he is just kind of like a mixed up guy and doesn't have his stuff together. So I feel bad for him in some ways too, but maybe he's a little bit manipulative in the way that he uses how he's such a nice guy to people and could be sweet. But sometimes, after a while, you kind of have to prove your worth, or, not be completely a burden on everyone. And even if you're a nice guy, it's just, sometimes it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's the same as in real life. Sometimes you're weighing people of like, man, are you really just asking, or are you being manipulative? I can't tell.
Yeah. And he's definitely guilty of some of that. But yeah, I like Randy because I played him, so I'll always stick up for him as much as I can, and I think he had good intentions, but also, Birdie, she's right to dump the guy.
Yeah, I was really impressed with all of the plot threads in the last season. I thought everybody's relationships really ended up in a very grounded, realistic, adult place.
Yeah.
Even the not wedding was great.
Thank you. Yeah, and I also that's a credit to all the the writing staff and everyone there. But I didn't kill anyone or anything, which was a huge plus. Randy, he didn't shoot anyone or anything like that. So I was pleased by that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure just how graduate this was going to go, like how out of control this is going to get. So I've listened to a few episodes of the Doughboys, mostly discovering how many pizza chains I don't live near. Just asking for a friend. Any tips on having a really badass podcast?
I think for us, for Nick Weiger and I, Nick is my co-host, it was that sort of thing of like, we had done stuff at UCB for so long, and then like eventually, like a lot of people start to graduate from there, and you don't get to get up on stage as much as you used to. And I always thought Nick was a super funny guy, and we wanted to work together in some way, some capacity. So, we both were like, oh, we should do a podcast. It's like, podcasts were big, but not even like, they just continue to grow every year as and they get bigger and bigger. But we were like, oh, we should do a podcast where we talk about food or something, just to do something to do something together, and also so both of us could kind of have an outlet to, kind of be up on stage in a way or whatever. And so that's why we started to do it. And we met and Nick had the idea about it being maybe a fast food podcast or a chain restaurant podcast, and we went to Cheesecake Factory, and we met up, and we were like, oh, this is what we should, like, here's what we should do. And we kind of figured it out from there. And then honestly, I feel like the reason that, the reason that it kept going and that people listened to it, which we're very grateful for, is just, it's basically just that one was the consistency thing. We release new episodes every week, and at one point I was like, oh man, every week, because just like this fast food, it's a lot, are we going to do this every week? And Nick was kind of like, yeah, we should do it once a week, which he was very right about. And I think that consistency factor is big, and that, people just want to listen to something on the way to work. Some people have hour-plus commutes, and it's helpful for people to just have something to listen to. And then if you have a weekly show, it's like, oh, okay, we can, like, I know I can tune into this show every week or whatever.
Yeah, I think about how irritated I get when things are preempted on television, but it's doubly so if I get into my car for my commute and my show's not there.
Yeah, no, exactly. We've heard it so much. When when an episode wasn't available one day or something like that, people would like where is it? And we're like, we don't know, because a lot of times we wouldn't know. But we're on a new network now. We're on HeadGum, a podcasting network, which is great. And honestly, I just feel like, yeah, just, people listen to you and they start to, and we were lucky with our topic, but honestly, I feel like it's anything that you're passionate about, because I think you'll find people who will listen to it no matter what. If it's something you're passionate about and it's out in the world, like there's going to be a big group of people who love baseball or wrestling or, in our case, fast food and chain restaurants. And Nick and I do love food, and not like we're both like foodies, even though I, of course, hate that word, but we were both like foodies. And then also at the same time, we do have a genuine love for chain restaurants and fast food. And we would kind of always, we would mention stuff to each other about like a new burger or new promotion at a restaurant. And then I feel like that just kind of luckily that just kind of taps into a thing that people love. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, food is,
Yeah.
It's one of the big three or whatever, which I won't even name the big three, and I don't even know if there is a big three, but sleeping, food, a couple other things are in there. But it was like, oh yeah, food for sure is the thing that people think about. And then especially fast food and chain restaurants, everyone has a connection to that. And we just kind of got lucky with that. And I think it's that sort of thing of maybe you're going to talk about something that doesn't connect, isn't a thing that connects with every single person. But then also, if it's something that you love and you like to talk about, then that's all that matters, and you'll find that audience if you're being consistent and keep working on it.
Yeah, I think of it like the click and clack rule. There's no subject I care less about than cars.
Yeah.
But the amount of car talk I've listened to is crazy.
Yeah.
Like those two crazy brothers on NPR talking about literally my least favorite subject. But they're consistent, they're funny, and at any sufficient level of nerd out is interesting.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, and I mean that's the sort of thing too, is I don't care about fishing in Alaska, but then I'll watch Deadliest Catch if it's interesting and it's on every week and it's there, you know what I mean? I'll watch stuff like that, and flipping houses or whatever it is. And I think you'll always find, necessarily that that you'll find a big audience or whatever. And not that even matters, so long as I think as you're just enjoying what you're talking about and enjoying what you're doing. So,
what's next for you? Anything big on the horizon? Those auditions last week panning out?
Who knows? The chances of booking something from an audition is it's under 1%. So I'm not gonna put too much on those. But yeah, I'm working on a few things here and there, and it's Hollywood is a strange place, and sometimes things work out, but more so things don't work out. And so I've been working on just a couple scripts with guys, a couple buddies that one of them I've been working on for 2 years, and we're still kind of waiting to hear on some stuff with, and then another thing that I'm developing with another place, and it's all good stuff. And I know that it's always a weird thing where people don't, they're more secretive about it than they have to be, which I don't even like, but it's I think more so it's just because they might turn into, it might be nothing, but yeah, I'm working on some stuff, and yeah, I do shows at UCB sometime. I got the podcast. I'm always out to create some new stuff, and I think I'm going to shoot a short this summer with myself and a couple other guys. So I'm excited about that.
Well, man, I can't wait to see you on screen again. I really enjoyed you on all 3 seasons of Love, and I just can't wait to see what you do next.
Oh, man, thank you so much.
Thanks for taking time today to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.
And have a great rest of your day.
You too. I'll talk to you.
The TV Dudes is an independently run podcast and a member of the Permanent Record Podcast Network. We are exclusively listener-supported. If you'd like to help us out, please go to patreon.com/tvdudes. You can like us on Facebook and Twitter at TV Dudes, and help us out on iTunes by giving us a 5-star rating and writing a review. To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com and permanentrcrd.com. I'm Grant Davis. Thanks for listening.